Bella, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Up, Mr. Kelly.
Attorney Bell starts. I'd just like to enter into evidence the map that Renee Solto referenced with the internal turning radius.
Okay, and it is marked on that map?
We'll pull it the other way. It's the map marked with the red delineations.
All right. Well, I remember it being referenced, but is it marked on the map now that what it's in reference to?
I'll mark the map.
Okay. What'd you lose? Thank you.
And for the record, Mr. Chairman, I marked the map Renee Basolto revisions.
There's the one for the
Thank you.
turning radius. Thank you.
Top right corner. Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Rock and roll. Good evening. As you all remember, I'm Stephen Bellis, and I represent the applicant, and I'm going to keep my rebuttal short. Let me start with a legal matter, because Judge Berger is the judge that hears most of these affordable housing appeals, and he issued a decision on January 14th, 2019, which is just a month ago. And I'll give it to you and counsel. And basically what it says is when you have an affordable housing project, the protest petitions don't apply, and that the board should not vote according to the 2/3 or whatever the statute says. So let me give a copy to your counsel. She can advise you on that, and I'll just enter the case into the record. Yeah. Tricia, I'm just going to give you this. I did the whole case. This is... yeah, can you read the name? It's Brantford Housing Authority. I'm sorry, go ahead. Brantford Housing Authority? Yeah.
It's Housing Authority of the Town of Brantford et al. Versus Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Brantford, Superior Court at Hartford, Land Use Litigation Docket.
Perfect, thank you. And Jay, I always attach my consents to the applications. My file has a consent. I don't know if yours doesn't, but I just found Bluebird's consent from an email. I staple them.
I believe we do have.
Yeah, I thought you did. I thought you did, but in case you didn't. All right. Enough with the procedural stuff. Where do I begin? I guess my point to this commission is that Connecticut's changing, and I'm not sure that it's something that you don't already know, but Don Klepper Smith is an economist, and the governor hired him to be the chairman of the economic advisors for the state of Connecticut. And he did some demographics reports for the state, and it shows that the 55 and older population is going to climb from 700,000 of us, I'm over 55, to 1.2 million by 2030. So that's an increase of 54%. We're getting older in Connecticut. In contrast, the student population's declining, actually. Who would have guessed? And the other thing that's bad in Connecticut is that people are leaving our state. We're losing population. In the year 2014, just picking one year, 40,000 young people left our state. We're ranked 12th out of all the 50 states for the fastest state for losing its population. So what does that mean? We're all here. I know that. So Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because it translates into a change, into a weakness in our housing market. What we're finding is that there's a need for alternative or flexible housing. That's not the way that all of us are used to. 1 acre, 1 house, half acre, half house. The people that are over 55 don't want these large plots of land. They still may want their single-family home. They don't want it as large. They don't want the big 4-bedroom colonials. But they want their privacy and they want to live in their own house. So what is happening? In Trumbull, I just did a project, 30 houses like this on a small little parcel of land on a busy road. They called it a village concept. They changed the zone, and they approved it in Trumbull. This is 6 months ago. In Shelton, there's a crossroad. It's called Long Hill Crossroad. You think James Farm Road is a crossroad? Long Hill Crossroad's a crossroad. And what did they do in Shelton? They put a private road, 56 single-family homes clustered like this, and another 60 condos coming out. And you may say to me, well, why would the zoning commission approve that? Well, they know that people want a different types of housing, and they know from a planning perspective that there's going to be tax revenue from these homes. And they also know that there's not going to be a lot of expenditures. And I'll show you a study that we did. Basically, there's not going to be that many students living in these types of projects. They don't want to live here. They want to live in they want to have the backyard with the swimming pool and the swing set and all that. And the kicker is, on both these projects, neither one of them were affordable. It wasn't forced down the town's throats. The town voted for it. They wanted it. They welcomed it. And, you know, I don't think that Stratford's all that much different than Trumbull or Shelton. We're not, you know, it's not like comparing Bridgeport to Stratford. That's different. But we're suburban towns, and I just think that we ought to face up to the fact that it may not be what you're used to, but it is something that is happening, not just nationwide or statewide, but even locally. And let me see if I have my little study. Yeah, I was shocked. I don't know. But anyway, for impacts on the school system, it turns out that Don Klepper Smith in his study comes out that it's about 0.26 students now per household. It keeps declining. So if you had 25 houses, you get 6.5 kids. Let's call it 7. William Ravis did a study for me in Shelton. There was 6 projects that are like this. We call them like village cluster, not the typical 1 acre, half acre, 1/3 acres. And the student ratio was 12%. So if you did the math, it's 3 kids. So there's not a big impact on the school system. So the towns like it because you're going to tax these houses. These houses are going to sell, I'm told, $450,000 to $500,000 in that price range. So they're not inexpensive homes. I don't know what your mill rate is. Probably, you know, I don't know. You guys know the mill rate, but it's over $10,000, obviously, of taxes per home. So what are we talking about? You're going to get a pretty good sizable chunk of change from tax revenue. And it's a private road. You don't have to plow it. You don't have to fix it. You don't have to maintain it. So I'll give you the impact study. I know you hear a lot of negativity tonight, and I just want to try to point out that there are positives to these projects. I've already said it to you. You already know it. This is a set-aside development, so these are not, when I say affordable, there's only going to be 8 of them. They're going to look the same. You won't know that one from that one from that one. You won't know which one's affordable and which one's not. The only thing you're going to know is that the person living here may be a school teacher. And I found it a little hard and a little disingenuous hearing Joe Kubik saying that these people are so poor they don't own a car. I'm not talking about that. To afford a house in that price range, even with the reduction, we're talking like my daughter, a school teacher. They don't have great salaries, you know. That doesn't mean she doesn't own a car. She does. But it's just a way for some of the people, police officers, we know who these people are that don't have high incomes. On the other hand, they work, and I think they contribute to the town. The feedback I've gotten from these projects is that the town likes them. And I said, why? And they said, well, you get people that are from Stratford or from Shelton or from Trumbull, and they're glad to stay in their town. They're usually a little bit older, and they're civic-minded. They contribute. They join commissions like this one. They join library boards like what I'm on. And why wouldn't we want these kind of people in our town? Why do we want to kick them out? We want to send them to Florida, North Carolina? They're going now. I don't want to be the last one here and have the door slam on my back. So I just say, keep your eyes open. I know it's not what you always see. Can we tweak it? Yeah, of course we can. You guys know that. But I've listened to everything that all the experts and so-called experts testify to tonight. And, I guess we can agree to disagree on certain things. But in my mind, I don't think that there's any real probabilities of a specific harm to health and safety. I really don't. I'll have some of our guys talk a little bit, but, there's the traffic study, everyone gets all worked up about it. Yeah, there's going to be more traffic. I mean, I'm not saying there's not going to be more traffic, but that's not the test. The test is it going to cause congestion at an intersection? Is it going to be dangerous? Is it going that's the test. And I submit that I'll let him talk about that, that it is not going to be. Environmental. I get a little worked up with the environmental guys, but I guess you see enough of them. But it really bothers me that they would say that there's wetlands here, all of a sudden, a new wetlands. Like, I didn't know wetlands can be new. But, just to be blunt with you, there was this project here on Parcel 1 went to the Wetlands Commission, got approval, no impact on the wetlands. There's an application for another application. I think the wetlands last month just reapproved what was approved on Parcel 1. No wetlands, no impact. So I don't know. I think that as far as I'm concerned, they haven't introduced a survey. They haven't shown where the boundary line of this, quote, new wetlands is, nor have they shown us a survey showing us where the other wetlands that I supposedly missed was. And without that evidence before you, the law is clear. Council will advise you on the two cases, Farmer versus Easton. Judge Radcliffe wrote it, and 500 North, which Jay was a star witness in. He said, if you're not building in the upland review area, then the Wetlands Commission has no jurisdiction, and made Jay take the application and submit it to you people. If you can build in the upland review area, but then the other side would have to show that there's an adverse impact to the wetlands. Well, there's nothing before you. There's no survey. You don't know anything other than the fact that we have a 250-foot buffer from the water course. I call it a drainage ditch. That's basically what it is. That's on the golf course. And the water is going to be flowing away from it. There's not going to be any impact on it. But as far as I'm concerned, the evidence that's before all of you is that we're not in an upland review area. Can reasonable changes be made? You guys know this better than all of us. Yeah. If you come back and say, Steve, we can approve this project, but there ought to be some reasonable changes made to accommodate a specific harm or a specific threat to health or safety, obviously we're open to that. You know that already. At least one of the gentlemen was candid and said, well, there's a little problem with the turning radius, and I'll have our engineer talk about it, but at least he was candid and he gave you the map. Well, if you just change the curb here, then you're okay, then you made the 28%. And if you change this a little bit inside here, you're going to make the turning radius. Those are the kinds of things that obviously you have to look at, and you can condition but with reasonable changes. And if that, listen, I'll be frank, if that means you have to lose a house or two to make it work, then that's what you have to do. I have no problem with that. I don't think you can just, I don't want you to just say you can, we're just going to throw this project out. The neighborhood doesn't like it, which I know they don't because I can hear them. They're not used to it. I get it. But it's not going to hurt their property values. It's not going to pose a hazard to them with health and safety. I mean, everyone brings up good points. What are you going to do with the snow? Well, look, do you think this is the first project that's had problems with snow? You come in with an excavator, you load up the dump truck, and you take the snow out. They do it at shopping centers. They do it in these other cluster divisions that we've gotten approved. And people aren't stupid. They don't want to risk having a fire truck not get into their property. So obviously we're going to do what's right. I'll give you the Klemper, some of the statistics. They're all like, I don't know. It's not good. But I'll stop talking and I'll get to some of the specifics. I'll tell Manny to keep it concise. And if you have a specific question, you're really concerned about a specific health or safety issue, ask them. And same with Kermit. So why don't you guys try to finish this off for me?
Steve, before you take off, I got one question.
Yeah.
With this proposed project, and you have another one that I guess is in the courts at 798 James Farm Road,
Yes, sir.
what, if either one of them gets passed, what effect would they have on each other?
That's a good question. So if I remember correctly, the project that's at 795 James Farm Road has 116 units, and it's up the road. And this one has 25. So what effect would it have? I think you're talking about traffic, perhaps? Yeah. So
Traffic, construction,
yeah, I'm trying to think.
everything.
I'm trying to think what the traffic was up the road. Can you excuse me for a second? Kermit, do you remember by any chance? Remember what?
Yeah.
795 James Farm Road.
Mr. Chairman, Kermit Hua, a traffic engineer. So if you think it this way, 116 units plus 25 units, so we're adding probably additional 20%. Think in terms of expanding the original project by 20%, right? The total traffic impact. And we have demonstrated, and even with the 116 units, there's more than enough capacity at all roadway intersections along James Farm Road. In my professional opinion, adding 20% to that 116 unit will not change that conclusion. So if you really want me to give you the exact level of service, A, B, C, D survey delays, I can give you that number. But having done those two studies, I don't feel that will be a significant impact in terms of any changes in the conclusion in that original report.
So you would see no additional or significant change by adding another 25 cars?
That is correct.
Well, I think we have to understand each other, because I think we're talking different languages, and I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean by that is he's an engineer and looks at whether it causes congestion at intersections, whether there's going to be additional cars. We know that.
Right.
But that's not, he looks at it as whether the road can handle that additional capacity. That's how he thinks. And that's when he gives his opinion. It's like, okay, if you had a little 4-foot road and already had a ton of cars on it, you can't take one more car. He looks at it as, okay, well, we have this road that has the ability to handle this many cars. So when I say we speak in different languages, his opinion, when he gives an opinion, is that it's not going to affect the level of service at an intersection so that it would cause congestion, cause an accident. Obviously, there's going to be more vehicles on the road, But that's not what he, as an expert, is testifying to. Am I correct, Kermit?
Just so you know, Mr. Chairman, if you sort of conceptualize the roadway capacity as, a big pipe, right? Let's look at what's the critical period for that big pipe in terms of, supply and demand of, traffic volumes. If you look at the existing volumes, a rule of thumb per lane per capacity per hour is 600 vehicles per lane per hour. So 2 lanes is 1,200 vehicles. If you look at the volumes we have, even the 2020 volumes, you're adding up the the volumes for 2 direction is about 700 vehicles plus or minus. So we are talking about even during the busiest hour, we are only using about 60% plus or minus of the roadway capacity, which is no problem. I was looking at a video a while ago. There's a three-way stop sign. Yeah, you have to stop. There will be some delays. So what? And that's expected. And I don't see any deficiency in terms of the capacity constraint on James Farm Road because what I just said, we are operating at a 60% capacity during the busiest hour. Obviously, during other hours, there's no problem. So that's the reason I said, that's the reason analysis results show, adding another 25 on top of 116 units will not be an issue, at least in my area of the expertise, that is the traffic capacity along James Farm Road. Thank you.
Okay, just doesn't make sense to me that you're probably going to throw another 75 cars on a regular basis in that one area that you're not going to see any effect.
Actually, Mr. Chairman,
And especially during construction, where there's going to be over 16,000 triaxle trucks.
I respectfully disagree with the 75 trip number. If you look at page 1 of my traffic report, the trip numbers are 19 trips for the morning and 25 for the afternoon. Now, I heard during these hearings again and again, you have 100 parking spaces. Therefore, you have 100 parking vehicles. After walking this field for more than 20 years, that is not how traffic analysis works. My traffic analysis is based on hundreds of examples all over the nation on similar projects. They count cars at the driveways. That's I get 19 vehicles and 25 vehicles in and out total, not 100 vehicles, not 75 vehicles. So if you want to comment on the construction impact, we are not doing any roadway improvement to James Farm Road itself. Obviously, if there will be utility connection, just like any other project, just like you build a single-family house, there will have some roadway openings. Obviously, they try to avoid peak hours, open the roads, have a flagger there if it is only one way. That's not 24-hour operation. They try to avoid the peak hours. And for 20 minutes, for 15 minutes, for half an hour, I will say that's about it. And I don't see that as a significant traffic impact unless, really, just like school buses, you all have delays. You don't have a flagger there, so what? Thank you.
Well, I don't agree, but thank you.
Good evening, Manny Silva from Rose Teason Company, registered civil engineer. So I have the STV. I'm just going to go down really quick and answer all the questions that he has. Basically, he's talking about unit 12, that there's a retaining wall along the foundation wall. That's typical. They just integrated foundation wall with a retaining wall there. 13 and 14, he's saying that they're too close to the proper line to maintain. Really, the way these things are built with the vinyl siding and such, there's really nothing to maintain that they can't access from the other 3 sides. You'd have to go there with a power washer maybe. He's saying that the snow plows will damage this house. Anyone who wants to keep their job as the guy plowing the snow here knows not to direct the snow towards that unit. He would just turn his blade the other way or forward until he cleared the house. He's saying there's no call-outs. There's an extensive legend that calls out all the different line types and what they mean. He's saying there was no road geometry. It's a private driveway. It's not a public street. there's no need for stationing and geometry. It's a straight road that has a turnaround. He's saying that STV and the fire expert talked about the turning templates. So I've worked with the town of Stratford for over 15 years, and with the fire marshal, we actually developed together the largest piece of equipment the town of Stratford has, and we created a turning template for it. And that's the one that's on the site plan right now. Now, I understand Renee, or the fire expert, used some larger apparatus that the town of Stratford doesn't own. But as you can see, even with his layout, with that larger piece of equipment, it's just some minor modifications to these 5-foot radiuses here, and the truck turns around. So it meets the fire code requirements to have a turnaround on site. So that's basically that. And the thing about the mailbox can go anywhere. If this is where we thought it would be more convenient for the people as they're leaving to pull off and then go to their mailbox. Essentially, most of the time they'll even walk there. But we could put the mailbox essentially anywhere. It's just a cluster of mailboxes on a pedestal. So he's saying that the garbage trucks will block the road. The garbage containers or rollouts, they just roll out. The truck picks them up, dumps them, puts them back down. It's less than a minute or two, and they're out of the way. So that shouldn't be an issue, especially on a private road like this or a private driveway. There was, also talk about, where the gas line, electric lines, and things are coming from, and if they have capacity. It's a public utility. They have to have capacity. They have to bring it to the site. So there really shouldn't be a concern there. And then there was some talk about, I see there was probably some confusion. I think that the engineers from the town have a response to a project, not this one that's the other James Farm Road, because they're referencing some things that were on that project that are not on this one, and they're asking where are this in this response, because I think they're reading the wrong response. Someone gave them the wrong engineering response for another project versus this one. The sanitary, he comments the sanitary sewer is at 12 inches, and that's too big. I mean, once we go to the PCA, we'll have that determination. If it has to get any smaller, it can get smaller. He talks about some cover on a catch basin here. There's plenty of pitch to try to drop that another foot to get the cover. There's no issue there. Grading utility, they mentioned that there was a divide in the property. He's correct. There is currently a divide in the property, but what we did is we collected all the drainage on site and stored it here on site, and we have a reduction to James Farm Road. The drainage that went here, we have actually 100% reduction to that wetland behind the stream behind the firehouse. So we have a reduction to James Farm Road, and we actually have a further reduction, which is much higher from the existing condition to that area behind the firehouse. So if they're always complaining, you always hear everyone complaining about flooding and things of that nature, and that's what we're trying to mitigate here. We designed everything right up to the 100-year storm. So when people talk about did we design to a higher capacity, this town only requires us to do it to 25-year storm, and we did it to the 100. And then he talks about one of the people talked about in our maintenance manual. They say once you see 12 inches of sediment, that has to be removed. But that's actually being collected in the vortex unit before the galleries. The galleries will never see any sediment. So they will always have their full capacity because everything's being caught in the snouted catch basins and in that vortex unit, the downstream defender, prior to the galleries. There was some talk about sight lines. So what we have here is that currently the site sits a little higher with a stone wall along it. And of course, if you stand out there right now, you say there's not enough sight lines, there's a stone wall in the way. The grades are not in the right place. So what we propose is to eliminate the stone wall that's along here in the front, and we're actually lowering the grade right along in the new proposed driveway to give a clear sight line to either side. So when you're looking at it from today's standpoint, if you were to put a driveway without doing any regrading, then yes, the sight lines are probably problematic. But with our modifications to the grading and removing any those obstructions in the sight line, we should have adequate sight line. I just want to keep it quick. Keep going. Let's see. I think I talked about the fire. And just to speak of, I guess, about the wetland impacts or the wetland area. As you can see here, here's the stream right here, and that's the setback area. It's 250 feet. And if you look on the environmental guy's, I forget his name, I'm sorry, on Remus' map there, if you just scale it with your own fingers, what that 250 is, you come here, it doesn't go past the houses that are on James Farm Road. The wetland is behind the houses on James Farm Road. So we're more than 250 feet from that, just based on that kind of measurement. And the location of, if he did flag a new wetland, the location of it, he was in the woods. I mean, everybody knows you're out in the woods, you don't know where you are. And he certainly cannot testify to where that wetland is compared to a property line, okay? An A2 surveyor, when we go to wetlands, an A2 surveyor, if he does not locate those wetland flags, is invalid because you don't know the position of them. And using the GIS is nowhere near what you need, meets the requirements for what you need to locate a wetland on a map. If anybody uses the GIS for anything, it's good information, overview, but it's certainly not accurate. It's a photo taken from 1,000 feet up in the air, and then they just guess and they draw the lines where they think the property lines are and where the topo is. So that shouldn't be even submissible. And I think unless I'm in error, I think that's it. I just want to reiterate that we have a treatment train with our stormwater so that we are treating it, infiltrating it. We're reducing the amount of runoff going to James Farm Road, reducing the amount of runoff going to behind the firehouse, and the impacts to the wetland. Like as Mr. Bellis stated, there's an approval from wetlands that has a road coming right alongside the firehouse with a cul-de-sac in this area, and that commission, which is in charge of wetlands, dubbed it to have not to have an adverse impact on those wetlands. So we are actually 250 feet away from that, and we have no development in that area. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Kermit Hua again. I briefly respond to the traffic comments in three areas: sight lines, traffic capacity, and safety. Sight lines, the civil engineer touched on it. We are willing to regrade the driveway and remove the section of existing wall that's on our property, so that will improve the sideline condition to an acceptable and safe condition. And the other comment I heard about sightlines, Attorney Kelly mentioned, a different sightline criteria based on police data. That comment was wrong because the police data was wrong. The reason I say that is I heard a discussion about the police data and the method they used. They can collect data above 10 miles per hour. So the implication is, what about the data below 10 miles per hour? The reason I say that, because this is a three-way stop intersection. When people just started, they may well be traveling at a speed, less than 10 miles per hour. So you are essentially dropping all those data. No wonder you have higher volumes. So the method police used in this report on the traffic data is incorrect, and therefore Attorney Kelly's comment on side distance requirement is incorrect. About traffic capacity, my study has demonstrated even with these 25 units, we are looking at the level of service A, B, C at all the intersections we analyzed along James Farm Road. There are some comments about how we get this level of service. including the data. We use the 2015 data. The STV comment is, this is too old, and they recommend newer data. My question is, actually, there really is no standard as far as how old the data is. In my professional opinion, 3-year-old data is fine, because we prepared this report, in early 2019 and June 2015 data during the busiest month of the year in 2015 is perfect. And there's no federal guidelines on how old data you can use. There's no state guidelines. There's no town guidelines. So that's essentially a comment the engineer of STV, get out of thin air, has no basis, no technical basis. There's also comment about, why you use this version of HCS and versus that version of HCS. Both versions are valid. Nobody says you can only use this version. I don't see any problem. And the method and the results they generate in terms of level of service delay are very similar. So I don't see that's an issue as far as using different versions of the software to generate the delays and level of service. Again, that's the second point. With these 25 units, we are generating limited number of trips during peak hours. There's no traffic, no capacity constraints at all intersections on James Farm Road. The last point is about safety. The police report discussed the number of accidents they have. It seems to be a large number, but guess what? They're summarizing the accidents along all James Farm Road and Oronoque Lane. I don't know how long the Oronoque Lane is, but James Farm Road, at least 2 to 3 miles over this 3 years. So I don't see any traffic accident potential at this specific location at the intersection of James Farm Road and Oronoque Lane near the intersection. As my original traffic analysis included in the report demonstrated, there really is no safety concern or safety patterns related to this specific location. And certainly because we are generating a limited number of trips, we will not contribute to any deterioration of safety conditions. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I know these are never easy for all of you. I get it. And I just want you to keep an open mind that if you feel that the project can be approved with reasonable changes that would accommodate any specific concerns for health or safety, you have the right to do that. I know that the town went out of its way to say that we're doing our best with affordable housing, and they are. Don't get me wrong, but unfortunately, the way our courts look at it, and when the legislature looks at it, they look at what's your number here in this column, and you're not at 10%. So all that good work that you're doing just doesn't get recognized. Is maybe the way to say it. But I don't think that. At the end of the day, I've gone through this, I don't know, 33 years I've been doing this, and I see it over and over and over. Everyone's all upset, the room's on fire, the sky's falling down, and then the projects get built, and no one even knows they're there. You forget they kind of blend in. So I'm not upset with these people. It's their neighborhood. I understand their concerns. And I just, I've been through it. I've seen it from going to the planning and zoning commissions to them being built and eventually blending in with the community. And so I'm like, I don't see the problems, but I understand their concerns. So I say the same to you. I understand that you have a job to do, but if there's some reasonable alternatives that you think are modifications that you think ought to be done to make the project better, let us know. I'll probably read about it in your decision, and if we can do that, we'll modify it. That's I don't come before you and just say, hey, I want to go to court. If we have to, we have to. But that's not my goal. So I'm listening to you, and I'll listen to your comments. And if we can make it work, we'd like to do that. Other than that, thank you all for listening, and I have nothing else to say.
Well, before you take off,
Yes. I thought you were gonna let me go.
no, we let the other guys go off easy.
You, on the other hand, go ahead.
Quick question, to eliminate the two buildings in the middle of that whole,
I'm guessing these two.
those two, how does that affect your project?
No, it would not affect it adversely. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And the next question
I hope I
have-
answered that the way you and I agree. You know what I'm saying by that.
Okay.
It's still viable. Is that the better way of saying
All right.
it? Yeah.
I just wanted to ask it for my own.
Yeah.
And as far as the wetlands,
Yes, sir.
your claim that obviously that other piece that they tested and is wetland.
Yeah.
If this board were to refer that back to the Wetlands Commission, I don't know if that's within our power or not, but to get another opinion.
Well, see, here's the problem. There's a whole parcel here, parcel 1. That's the one you're referring to. That is not part of this. Obviously, you guys know it's not part of this proposal. That is under appeal. Is that the right word, Patricia? Yeah, it's under appeal now. So, we're litigating that issue right now, she and I, on this piece. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere, to answer your question. I don't think that it would go anywhere. I think that you, as a planning commission, have your own criteria. In this case, it's 8-30G, and that's what should guide you. That's, your council will give you advice. I'm not trying to give you advice. And I think wetlands should deal with wetlands issues, and she and I can argue that in another forum. Referring it to them will not get you off the hook.
I'm not looking to get off the hook. I'm just trying to make everything right here, one
Yeah,
way
you
or
are.
another.
You can ask me. Yeah, that's my opinion.
Any other questions from the commission?
Yes, Jay.
Jay?
I actually have a question for Attorney Sullivan. So if the commission were to inquire with the conservation administrator about the presence of the wetlands, this new wetland that's apparently there, could the hearing be closed and the commission still get an opportunity to review comments in the record from the conservation administrator and have that be part of their decision? I was always of the understanding that staff could still submit commentary, but that might not be correct.
Yeah, I don't think so, Jay, but I'll let Pat give her
I
opinion.
think that would be problematic because
Yeah.
because then they wouldn't have any opportunity to
Yeah.
respond. The other thing is that in general, you should have the inland wetlands. I mean, the statute says you file inland wetlands simultaneously with or prior to a zoning application. So if there's an inland wetlands application that needs to have been filed here, then it's late.
Yeah, and my position is there's no evidence at all to have submitted an inland wetlands application because we're outside the 250-foot upland review. And that's the cases that I gave you,
I'll look
Farmer.
at what you
Farmer and 500 North.
Even though tonight's new evidence states that there is wetlands.
Well, then that's a question of fact. So basically, you have evidence in the record now that suggests that that the development is within the 250-foot upland review area, which should have triggered an application to the Inland Wetlands Commission, or at least to the administrator, to figure out whether there's a significant impact on the wetlands. I mean, the other thing, I don't know the distance between the evidence that I believe Attorney Kubik brought forward seemed to suggest that there was a significant effect to the wetlands that are across the road. So that was a significant impact, or that's what he was suggesting, which should also trigger an inland wetlands application. Now, Attorney Bellis is saying he doesn't think that's within 250 feet, but if the testimony seemed to be that from the engineers that all the water, which is now, I guess, sheet flowing across the property, in two different directions is going to be collected and then directed under the road to, find its way pretty quickly to a wetland. So, I mean, those are all factual questions that you're going to have to, resolve and figure out whether there should have been an inland wetlands application, at least an inquiry.
Mr. Henrik?
Is there if we referred it from here, based on what we heard today, if we referred it over to inland wetlands and waited for their decision, is there a time frame that we have to render our decision? And does that allow them time to?
No.
It does not.
Yeah, no, good thought, but no, it wouldn't work. Yeah, my position is that, I gave you the evidence, and that's the evidence that we have from a surveyor, that we're on both sides, outside the 250 feet. Council will tell you that if you're outside the 250 feet, then you don't have to go to wetlands. So that's what we have,
Mr.
It's then a
Solvay?
factual question, which is your, that's within your purview to determine the credibility of the witnesses, what the evidence actually is, so.
So
Mr.
then the
Solvay.
question becomes, if it's a question of fact, do we have to decide this question of fact? Do we go out there with a tape measure and look for it? Or?
No,
Well, you can't,
it would make sense, but you're not allowed to do it. No.
Or is it just, in all seriousness, I mean, I sometimes like to throw ridiculousness out to illustrate points, but, I mean, in theory, what you're saying is that this probably should have been resolved prior to us even hearing the case, and I hate to put the commission in a position where if we invalidate, do we have to start over again? So I'm looking for some guidance, and maybe it might be worth it to not close the hearing until we resolve these issues, or if we have to make a decision, I might have to go back and refer to some of the documents and the testimony in order to substantively say whether there is or there isn't, because I'm not sure that I, would be able to make that decision now post. I wasn't really looking for that, and I was listening, obviously, to the testimony, but, that's a very specific question that we now would have to answer as beyond just an approval or denial or whatever on the application. So I think we are looking to our staff for some guidance on this.
Was it this case, or was it another case? I know there have been times when you have said that it should have gone to inland wetlands as a matter of course. Was it this case, or was it another case that you had suggested it had taken that path prior to?
there definitely was another case where it should have gone to inland wetlands first. I like to be safe rather than sorry, so if I'm bringing an application and I think there's the potential for an inland wetlands issue, then I would take it there and see what they say, whether it's an administrative sign-off or it's an application needs to be filed. But that's Mr. Bellis's purview in terms of what he did with this application. I didn't hear any evidence today measuring the distance from the wetland that's on the other side of the road. That was just Mr. Bellis's testimony that he didn't think that was 250 feet from the wetland. I didn't see a map with those wetlands marked. I don't know how far off property. 250 feet's pretty far. But that's a question of fact, for you to determine. You guys know the area, and you know whether that's, or whether that is an issue that is something that is of concern to you. That's all. That's what you're here for. But I do think that you do have information in the record that is cutting both ways on that.
Yeah, I mean, your duties are different under 8-30G, which makes it harder for you guys because you have to show that that there is a probability, not just a possibility, that there would be harm to the environment or safety or health, and if you don't have that evidence, then as she'll tell you, the burden shifts to you guys, not to me, and so you're in a tough spot.
Well, I think the law is that in an 8-30G application, the burden shifts to you. But you still get to look at whether there's a health or a safety
Oh, yeah.
issue, or an issue of public policy or public, good that needs, where you would need to look at whether or not an environmental issue rises to that level. The other thing that you look at is, I may have a slight difference of opinion with Attorney Bellis with regard to the weight that's given to the affordable housing, because, he was suggesting that, hey, you're not at 10%, so the burden shifts, which is correct. But the argument that Attorney Kelly, I believe, was making is that because you have, affordability can be looked at in a number of ways. There's the statutory way to look at it, and it's also, is there housing that is affordable for the people who are looking for it in your town and under their circumstances. And what he was saying is, because you had these two big projects that went off, and because you have still managed to climb your way toward the goal. And so the question is whether the project outweighs the need for affordable housing. And you can make that determination, that's not just from a percentage perspective, because frankly, some of the percentage, units, every time that you put on units that are affordable, you're also putting on market rate units. So it's very hard to increase from a mathematical perspective the number of affordable units that you have. So, I don't think it's misplaced for you to look at the existence of housing that is affordable in your community in helping you decide whether this project outweighs the need for affordable housing. Because this project is also going to bring on market rate units, as any affordable project does that is not an 100%, project, 100% affordable. And some towns do it that way. They say, listen, we're going to build our own affordable housing, we're going to put on 100 units, and then that, you can quickly accomplish getting
10%.
towards your 10% goal. Otherwise, you're always adding market rate units.
But I guess, and I appreciate that information, but to the question again of the wetlands, and it's not questioning credibility, it's, I guess for me, questioning probability. We have somebody who says it's not there, we have somebody who says it is there, and we have somebody who had an opportunity to take the steps and go through the process and show that it's actually not there.
And that, you make those factual determinations. So if you think that there's sufficient evidence in the record to suggest that somebody has raised the issue of whether or not that's within 250 feet, and you're clear that it isn't, then that's how you make your factual determination. And if you're not clear, or you're clear in the other direction, that is you determining who's in front of you and what they're saying. I don't know how much time you have left on this. I know you don't have enough time to go to inland wetlands and figure all that out, but to the extent that you wanted additional information about whether or not, somebody does the math, an engineer and a wetland scientist say, here's where the wetlands are, and here's, that I'm just counting, as you said, you just go out and measure. I don't know whether you have time to do that, but that's the way you would, if you want some certainty as to it, then you need to get you either have to feel comfortable that you already have certainty in the record, or you have to get people to give you that information.
So the fact that the opportunity was afforded the applicant to go through the process and he chose not to do it, then we're to some extent limited to the probability that it could be there. And that probability is enough, can carry enough weight to guide us in our decision?
For you to make an inference.
Okay.
I think that's the way I would look at it.
Okay, thanks.
So just continuing on that discussion, so the opportunity was there, and let's just say that the applicant had the potential. He could have done it, and either didn't see it as a concern or did not do it, one way or the other.
I'm not sure what you mean the applicant saw it.
All right.
I came to the hearing with you tonight, and this is the first I've heard of it.
But the other property that had been there previously, you said that had been reviewed by inland wetlands. So there's wetlands in the general area.
There's a water course that is recognized by your Wetlands Commission as being a regulated activity.
Right.
And that watercourse is depicted on this map by a real surveyor. And then they measure, and it's 250 feet away, and I know you can't see from there, but it says here, 250-foot upland review area. So that's been measured.
Okay.
And there is nothing, you can see that there's no homes and there's no clearing, there's no activity in the upland review area. So that's what I go by.
Okay.
Yeah.
But as a matter of law, if the zoning commission has questions similar to this situation, are we allowed to seek the guidance of inland wetlands, or are we precluded from doing that now that we're at this stage within the process? We are precluded,
Yeah, I think I would
Okay.
agree with Jay.
That
You're
was my question.
You're precluded.
unless
I
you
think
differ.
You're precluded from doing that, and I will say that I hadn't heard about other wetlands until this evening either. So I don't know that Attorney Bellis had the opportunity to whether you can draw an inference that he just didn't do it because maybe he didn't know about it.
No, and I didn't mean to
So-
to say that. You know,
And I
I'm-
wanted to make that clear just from
Yeah.
from my own perspective. But you don't. The commission doesn't drive the application in terms of going out and getting additional information. They listen to what the applicant says. They listen to what anybody who has a comment, good, bad, or indifferent, to an application, and then that's your record, and that's what you use to reach your determination, along with the information that you have as commissioners who live in town and have know things about town. And that's in part why you get deference from the court in terms of those factual determinations. But Attorney Bellis is right. 8-30G application, burden shifts to you, and we've already gone through that.
And that was actually the reason for my question, because if the burden's now on us, what
Yeah.
other means do we have to ascertain that we're making a correct judgment to justify our decision? And if that's legally precluded to refer it to wetlands for review, then we probably are now restricted to what's on the record.
That's
Would that
correct.
be correct?
If you have sufficient time left, you could say to Attorney Bellis, go get me the information about whether or not there's that wetland that Attorney Kubik has brought to our attention this evening is legitimate.
Okay.
But that's not a determination that's going to be made by the Inland Wetlands Commission. That's a determination he's going to bring in, as he said, I've got a real surveyor, a real engineer. I mean, these guys are licensed. They have an obligation to come in and give you accurate information.
And the applicant would have to grant an extension to the commission.
See, I told you weren't getting off
Yeah,
easy.
you were right.
Okay. No further questions? Or do we? Nope. Not I.
The only question that I think is the pressing procedural question is, do we close the public hearing tonight? Or do we leave it open for any review or arguments, whatever evidence that might come up from this? So I think that's the question that I think we need some help with.
I'll give just my opinion. I mean, we've heard the applicant, we've heard the public, we've heard the town, as well as the formal opposition in that rebuttal, and then we're backing it back down the tracks. I personally think there's enough information in here for us to make our decision based on what was presented to us. Obviously, we don't even have our fifth member here to vote tonight anyways, so we have time to go over what was presented to the board tonight.
All right.
Well, I would.
Pat?
Since we've had formal opposition here, I just want to make sure that there's nothing that Attorney Kubik or Attorney Kelly want to put on the record, and obviously Attorney Bellis has the opportunity to respond.
Well, I can tell you that I know where Joseph Kubik for Concerned Citizens Group of Stratford. I was just chatting with the town's soil scientist, and he can tell you how far away the wetlands are from the property line. Pardon me?
I didn't say anything.
He's here now. I don't see the harm in even keep extending this, although we need an extension granted. They're there. You can see the skunk cabbage in the spring from the road. So that said, maybe we could let the expert explain to you how close.
So you want to wait till spring?
No. The expert can tell you now.
Okay.
I'm not going to agree to that.
Yeah, my only reservation about that is that this has only been brought to his attention this evening, and if his, expert doesn't have the opportunity to respond to that, I don't think that would be.
Yeah, it's not fair.
That would not be
But
fair.
the town's expert has already testified as to it.
Well, as I said, whatever in the record already is fine, and if Attorney Bellis wants to leave the record open so that he can provide information that counters or confirms what's been put on the record, that's fine. But to have to ask him to respond to that surprise is, that's going to be a procedural issue on appeal.
Yeah, guys, just so we're clear, it's this I don't, the owner could deny me or my soil scientist permission to go on his land and dig, and likewise the person over here. It's kind of out of my control. I don't want to mislead you and think that, it's on our property and we can tell you where it is. I could just see him saying, "I'm sorry, Attorney Bellis, what are you doing on my land? Why are you digging up my golf course?" So my inclination is I've given you the information that I had. It's the best information. I wasn't hiding or holding anything back. I learned of this when like you all did. And I think that the information you have, you can make your decision. That's just my gut.
So you're basically saying you do not want an additional opportunity to respond to the information that was provided this evening?
That's correct. Yeah, you might as well close it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess we're done.
You can make the
Motion to close by Mr. Hendrick, second by Mr. Solhavy. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Now I need a motion to close the public hearing for tonight by Mr. Solhavy, second by Ms. Manis. All those in favor say aye. You want to vote on that beer? He said yes, he would. He'll take it. Yeah, the beer permit. He said he would take whatever answer we gave him tonight. You have tonight's,
All right.
agenda? Because I'm working on 2 weeks ago. That
We'll
or
take it off the table?
the work agenda, yeah. For some reason, I'm working on 2 weeks ago. Okay.
And before we get going,
And then just leave it on the table. Are you guys okay with the beer thing? Linda,
Okay, so we don't need that?
so
you okay with the beer
vote
thing?
on February, I didn't write it in. We'll just vote on February 13 minutes.
Okay. Oh,
Unless you
okay.
want to waive the rules, and we can just as easily do it next month, too.
Yeah, we'll do it next month.
Some people thought there was loitering and other stuff going on there.
Okay, is
Right,
anybody,
Worried about the competition.
yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody want to take it off the table?
Not with that.
They want to talk. All right. Anybody want to take 2336?
Yeah. We'll give it to 'em.
No?
I don't, I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it. All right. Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Hendrick.
motion to take 2336 Barnum Ave off the table.
Motion by Mr. Hendrick to take 2336 Barnum Avenue off the table. Do I have a second? By Ms. Manis. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Mr. Chairman, motion to approve 2336 Barnum Ave, approval of a liquor location to establish a Class G grocery beer permit in the CA zone.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hendrick to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Solhavy. Under discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I've gone by there a number of times, and although there is a significant amount of loitering at the liquor store a little further up the road, I hadn't seen any there. It's always been a place where there's been significant convenience store traffic there, and I don't think this will increase it. I don't think he's done anything. If he does, he'll have to deal with the law. If there is loitering or if there is illegal sales, then I think then the law. But I don't think we should deny somebody just on just for some of the reasons that have been stated.
I feel a little bit differently. I just feel that nothing's changed since the time we denied it to tonight. Obviously, with the language barrier, nothing was going to change. For that reason, I'll be voting no. But
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I agree with the statements of Mr. Henrik, and I've gone past there several times as well in the time since we've had the last application, and I've not seen the situation be overly. I've not seen the loitering that had been alleged, and as far as any of the other issues, it had been a similar type of establishment for decades prior. I think it obviously is something that has to be watched by enforcement, but that would probably take the place of either our police or liquor control or state, whatever. I know there was a lot of confusion in the last time, so I think I'm ready to give them a chance, and it's on them. If they fail, then obviously there's other authorities that they're going to have to answer to as to how they handle that.
okay,
I'll vote yes.
Manis.
I feel the same way that Mr. Solhavy feels and Mr. Hendrick. Give the kid a shot.
Okay.
I don't see much traffic there. I go by there a lot of times, too. I mean, I never saw any congestion there with kids or anybody there. So I'm going to vote yes. I would
Okay.
vote yes for it.
All in favor, vote say aye. Opposed? I vote no. Passes 3-1. I think I agree with you 100%. Well, I think we're going to hold off on those till next month. Discussion, campsite plan, nothing. Zoning enforcement, nothing. Beep, boop. I think the next thing is motion to adjourn. Oh, what's that, the theater overlay?
Yes, so Commissioner Solhavy requested just a brief status report as to what could be built tomorrow, essentially, for the Theater Overlay District, the former site of the Shakespeare Theater. There are several zones under that overlay district, and I just put together the permitted and prohibited uses for each one of those underlying zones and overlay. And there doesn't need to be any discussion tonight. That was more informational, but I'd be happy to field any questions if you want tonight. Otherwise, we can think about it and discuss another night. Did they not go out?
Yeah, they went,
All right.
I forgot mine and it somewhere. Okay. Mr. Henrik?
And then under this discussion, the citation, is this something we need to just be aware of or to act on?
Yes, that was just put in the packet just so that the commission is aware of, appeals that are going on. There's no discussion that's required. It's just for your information on projects that you voted on.
And this is in no way executive session type information?
Not currently. I think that what we'll do, we're waiting for this to work its way through the probably the initial court meeting. My guess is that the judge will instruct the town attorney and the applicant's attorney to come back to the commission, see if they could work out some sort of a negotiation. At that point, the town attorney may instruct that we go into executive session to discuss it, and then maybe make a decision based on that advice that we receive.
Thank you. Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Hendrick, second by Ms. Manis. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved. Thank you.